Welcome to A Window on SAHMRI, where we take you inside South Australia's independent not-for-profit health and medical research institute. Each episode, we get to know the people driving our life-changing research, getting into what motivates them personally and how their work is delivering a brighter, healthier future for all.
Joyce, tell us a bit about your background.
I am from Congo. I was born in Congo. I left Congo in 96. I was 2 years old. We went to Kenya, spent about 8 years there as refugees, and then came to Australia in 2005 and have been in Adelaide ever since.
And who is we?
We is my immediate family and I. So my mum, my dad, and my 3 younger siblings. Yeah, so when we were in Congo, there was a genocide period between the Hutus and the Tutsis in 1996, and the town that I'm actually from in Congo was the centre of that sort of civil unrest, and all driven by tribalism, essentially. The place is called Goma, so it borders Rwanda and Congo, and so it was a very hot spot for lots of killing, lots of civil unrest. So my parents started the trek on foot en route to Kenya.
Wow.
Yeah.
Being 2 years old, I suppose you don't remember.
And I am
from then?
so glad. Yeah, I think it's a really cool protective mechanism when you go through so much trauma. I mean, because kids are verbal at that age, so they would have some recollection of something. But no, I have absolutely nothing.
Is it something your parents talk about?
They do. And actually, I think I was probably 17 or 18 years old when my mom actually sat us down. And I remember it was my sister, my youngest sister and I, who is 7 years old. And she was born in Kenya, so, you know, she didn't know any of it. But just kind of talking about our history, how we left Congo, the struggles that they went through, just it was so normal just watching your friends get shot in the head, literally leaving everything behind, even important things like documentations of your existence, like your birth certificate and all of that. Just, it's not important at that time. Your life is. And, you know, I've gone back since and I've met my family members that are still alive and doing really well. And the first thing they'll tell me is like, oh, yeah, we remember you because we left you, we almost left you on the bed when we were fleeing from the war. And it's a funny story now, but to anyone else that's not from Congo, it would be horrifying, but it's just so normal. So, yeah, that is my background. But, you know, obviously we made it to Adelaide and we're so thankful for the security in general in Australia and the opportunity to thrive in so many aspects of our lives that we wouldn't be able to.
What sort of strength does that give you, or perspective on the life that you live now?
It makes you thankful for so many things in your life. You know, we were back... my family and I were back in Congo at the beginning of the year. For New Year's Eve, the celebration was shooting bullets in the air. And so we went to bed. We got there on the 31st. And when we went to bed that night, you could just hear bullets firing. And everyone was freaking out for us because we haven't heard bullets before. Like, this is Australia.
Did they tell you that was going to be happening?
Well, I don't think they were expecting for it to happen. But yeah, people were just like firing it all up. And we were in our rooms, we were quite safe, and the area that we were in was okay, but literally 5 or 6 kilometres away from where the house is, there was a full-on war happening in one direction, and on the other direction is a refugee camp that we have to drive through to get to the markets, and you can just see the effect of that, and it's just there. And this is stuff that you generally see on TV, you'd never expect to see it live, and like little kids running around in like paper bag nappies and makeshift nappies. And yeah, it was wild, really eye-opening. So, you know, you look at that and then you come back to Australia and then the inconveniences that you have in life are suddenly not even worth mentioning, right? Being able to wake up in the morning, have breakfast, have a family, have chats, be able to work, have regular pay, hop into your car and just go, like Centrelink, health, all of that stuff. It's a huge privilege.
Yeah, so many privileges that we take for granted.
Yeah, for sure. And being a female as well. You know, obviously I'm in science, and once you step out into the science world as an expert, you are quite well recognised regardless of your sex or gender. That's not existent there. So it's, you know, it's just another aspect of life to be thankful for as well.
But you loved going back to...
Yeah, I loved it. It's the only way I get to know where I'm actually from. And even though my immediate family's here, I'm very close with my grandparents and my aunties and uncles there as well. And so, I love them and it's great to be able to see them. Otherwise, I only get to talk to them on the phone. And the last time I saw them was maybe like 11, 12 years ago. And so, after 12 years, so much has happened in a person's life. We all went back. My brother's engaged. We're all fully functioning, independent adults. And it was just something for them to be really proud of as well because, their kids are doing really well. And that's the only thing they can be happy about.
But it must be special to see a place that's a part of you that has always been there, but that you haven't had that contact with.
Yeah, for sure.
And then to go back as an adult and sort of see where you fit within that.
Yeah, definitely. Because even though I think I was 11 years old when I came to Australia, you still retain bits about your culture and you retain them because the house that you live in doesn't suddenly become Australian. Like my parents are very much African parents and like my mom, whom we live with, is very much still African. Like we still have African food. We're still expected to behave specific ways. So going back is a really nice way of understanding why things happen the way they do, why certain expectations are put in place. And it just sort of ties all the social aspects that we're expected to have just really nicely, and just like the respect as well, because it's very community-based. For example, here, if I went to school, you're calling your teacher by the first name or whatever they decide. Whereas there, everyone is always uncle and auntie. But the reason for that is because you literally grow up, like if your parents are working, they hand you over to your neighbor and your neighbor will discipline you and grow you up as if you were their own child. And so that respect is there from the beginning because that's just the environment that people live in.
There's that it takes a village mentality.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the neighbors are the family and the community. That's why, when you have a big function, everyone's there, which is also really nice. Yeah.
I know volunteering is an important part of your life. Is that based on the way you view community and the importance of it?
To be honest, volunteering for me is a way of being productive with my spare time. I think for me, I very quickly or early on in my life realized that it's very easy to sort of get drawn in some of the very superficial things that, essentially mean nothing in the end. And volunteering is something that just makes me feel like part of a community and do things in a community, but also be useful to people around me. And I can model that essentially however I want.
Tell us about your volunteering role.
Oh, so I volunteer with St. John Ambulance as an event medic. So I get the awesome privilege of covering events, meeting a whole bunch of different people. Love doing all the sporting events because I really like watching sport. But also one of the things that I've really enjoyed is actually training one of the divisions in St. John Ambulance. So I'm part of the Mitcham division. We have a team of about 20 people and they all have very different experiences. We have like paramedic students, we have, technical officers, we used to have accountants, and you just don't know who you're going to meet. And so being able to talk about health, being able to teach health, being able to enable people to be really confident with situations that can potentially be really scary, like, having to give CPR to someone that's having a heart attack or, a parent who's distressed about their kid potentially having an allergic reaction or whatever it might be. It's pretty cool. And just being able to also learn how to communicate that, I think in itself has been a massive learning experience because you don't really know how much you know until you have to explain it. And
so true.
And sometimes you think you know things and then when you start talking, you're like, oh.
And then they just got the blank stare looking back at you
and
you realise it doesn't
and
make
you're
sense.
trying to recalibrate a different way of saying something and it's just not great. So
yeah, that's a skill, especially under pressure.
It's been such a huge learning curve. And even though I'm doing it because I genuinely love doing it, I've actually gotten so much out of it, I reckon, than I've probably put in, which is actually quite unexpected, really. Yeah.
Have you had any particularly confronting experiences
with St. John Ambulance?
Yeah,
I have, but to be honest, I haven't really left an event feeling that traumatized because the system is designed to be really supportive. And I guess that's what's made me or molded my perception on what I need to be like to volunteers that come through and need to also learn those skills because, you know, like even at a workplace when you're not volunteering, or just like learning how to cope with these stressful situations, learning how to take healthy approaches when you have gone through something that could otherwise be really traumatic for you, and sort of navigating your thought processes and emotional processes like during and after that as well. Yeah, it's just I haven't really been scarred by anything per se. I've been taught to learn from that more than anything.
But it can be full on sometimes.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. And when you know, because I've been in it for a very long time now, like 5 years, you become responsible for people also performing first aid. And so, you know, that there's that leadership aspect and that it's immediate because what you're doing to a patient is potentially life-saving. So, you know, putting that stress on that person, like we need to do this now, but also allowing them to do it calmly. It's been definitely a learning journey because it's definitely ongoing for me. And I feel like
people management educational side of it is another level once you do it yourself and do it well, and then actually teaching others to be able to do that and delegate, and that's just what you do in your spare time. Tell us about your research and your area of work at SAHMRI.
Yeah, so my research, I look at the gut microbiome. My main project is looking at the gut microbiome of leukemia survivors and looking at what that means or how the gut microbiome plays into their long-term health. And a small aspect of that is also looking at how, you know, specific treatments in leukemia also are affected by the gut microbiome, and how the gut microbiome also plays into the treatment efficacy of some of these drugs. So, you know, there's a lot of immune studies also involved in this, so understanding how the immune system helps a person get over cancer from the gut microbiome angle, but also how whatever's left after their therapy plays into their long-term health in terms of their gut bacteria, the good versus bad, etc.
What have you learned about how integral our gut health is to our overall health?
Well, I think we've actually, as human scientists, health practitioners, have known for a very long time how important our gut health is because, you know, when you go to some of the remote or, I guess, developing countries, often the first intervention that a person will have in terms of managing their sickness or managing their health will be eating. And the gut microbiome or modifying the gut microbiome to confer health has always started with food. And so you go Mediterranean diet, you know, you have cooling foods, heating foods. You know, if a person's unwell or has some immunological issue with them, they'll have ginger or something, or have oranges to increase their vitamin C. Like, so we've always known. It's just understanding what actually happens at like a microscopic level that is still evolving quite fast. And I feel pretty privileged to be in this place where I'm at now because, yeah, there's so much that's coming into play. There's so much that people know, but there's also so much that's unknown. And it's awesome to be part of such a niche and evolving field. Yeah.
What's surprised you since you started?
I think, you know, being a PhD student, you have an idea of what a PhD life is going to be and all the exciting aspects of being a PhD student. And then you get humbled so fast by the workload that's required and the endurance and just, I guess, balance in mental health when things don't quite go according to plan. And I'm a planner, and I have learned that there's only so much you can do. Sometimes you've just got to go with it. And it's weird because it's the complete opposite of my personality.
So how do you feel like you've developed as a person through those first few years of your PhD?
The way I've developed has very much been driven by the support I have received. So in all aspects of my life, whether it be family, whether it be social and professional through my PhD, I have great support. And part of, you know, having that great support is receiving feedback. And so being able to get constructive feedback, because, you know, we always want to hear how well we're doing. No one wants to actually hear that you're lacking in specific aspects of your life. And I think just being able to learn how to accept feedback and understanding that despite this feedback being not, shiny and positive and all of that, it's actually good for me to be able to take this feedback on and to be able to progress and do really well in my life. And also understanding that just because someone gives you bad feedback doesn't mean that they have bad intentions towards you. Yeah.
So you've got good mentors.
Absolutely. Very thankful for my mentors.
Given how difficult it is doing a PhD, and you're well aware now of the reality of being a scientist, how does it make you feel about having a future in science as a researcher?
Yeah, I'm very excited. As I'm progressing through my PhD, I am also learning about the skills that I actually have that I probably wouldn't have known had I not started a PhD. And I'm really enjoying this process of learning, this process of inquiry in science. And I really enjoy the health teaching aspect of it as well. So putting all those together, there's so many different ways it could go. I am very keen to be involved in teaching. I'm very keen to be involved in research, cancer, gut microbiome space. I was working in a hospital once upon a time and love the patient interaction aspect. So and my project is very much that translational medicine, which is like in between the lab and the hospital interventional pathways. So being in that specific spot, I just get awesome feedback from both aspects of health. And so, there's so many things I could do. I just have to take the right steps. And that's why I'm very thankful for the mentors that will help me make the right steps towards my career as well.
How did you get started in this in the first place? Where did your interest for science first get sparked?
You're going to laugh at this one. So when we first came to Australia, there was this cartoon, Tracy McBean, the famous inventor.
That was it?
That was it. Oh, I was convinced I was going to be an inventor. And, on ABC3, we were learning English and you'd have the backyard science, or they'll have the red cabbage and they would pour vinegar in it and you just watch the color change and you'd be like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And I was like, well, this is it. I have to be a scientist. But I also really loved medical shows. So, all the really cringe ER shows.
Grey's Anatomy.
Well, see, I never watched Grey's Anatomy because the English was too complicated. But once I started understanding what was going on, I don't know, I can't tell you how many times I've watched House. And so I was convinced I actually wanted to do medicine. And for a long time, I thought, you have to do either one or the other, science or medicine. And I didn't know that you can actually do science that incorporates both aspects, where you get to learn so much about the clinical space and also learn so much in the scientific world. So as I've grown up, I've kind of, built onto my little, the curious aspects of my childhood. And it's kind of cool being able to look back and seeing, this is actually where it started from a cartoon.
So what path did you follow from watching ABC3 to ending up at SAHMRI?
Oh, this one's a bit of a long one. Summary, yes. So I naturally did sciences, a lot of the sciences in high school. So I did, the physics, chemistry. I didn't do biology, interestingly, and I loved maths. So I did that. And then in uni, I did medical sciences because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do medicine or not. And after finishing my bachelor degree, I went and worked at the Women's and Children's with the gynecology team there for a while. And I had an awesome boss who just took so much time in teaching me things, even though I was working in an administrative capacity. But in doing that, I actually observed that the best doctors were the ones that had a science background or were involved in research. They just knew so much. They knew the best things to offer the patients, the latest and greatest for those weird cases that they'd get. So I was like, well, if doctors, to be a good doctor, you need to do science. You may as well do science. And so I applied for my honours in 2020 and got it and started my honours, and of course COVID. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to give it my best shot. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, I did what I could. And I did well, and I was shocked. And I was very lucky. My supervisor was very happy to have me back. And so I came back and now I'm doing my PhD. So I started my PhD in 2022.
There you go.
Yeah.
Cool. Good summary.
Thanks.
So do you think the best doctors have that science background because they have that wealth of information to draw on?
For sure. I think, because medicine is evolving so much, having a science background, being aware of what trials are taking place, understanding the mechanisms, it just helps diagnose patients better. You have so much more broad understanding of some of the other things that are happening out there. And I guess it makes you more aware for some of the weird things that would also present clinically. And this is what I observed when I was working. And so, yeah, some of the best doctors are definitely the ones that are doing research because they just end up knowing so much more than what's offered in the hospital. And, working in a hospital, you get very limited aspects on what can actually be done interventionally as well. So
now that you're entrenched in research, would you ever consider wanting to be a clinician, or do you like the fact that you can potentially work on the science that's going to inform better treatments and actually make things available that aren't currently available or improve current systems rather than being the one practicing?
To be honest, I am very open-minded. I currently really enjoy where I'm at. I feel like I'm learning a lot. And if I for some reason, stop learning in the scientific world, interventional world in terms of medicine is definitely something I could see myself pursuing. But right now I am very content, actually. So it's a pretty satisfying place to be because, it's very rare to sort of be really gratified by what you're doing, even though I'm not done yet.
What do you get from being at SAHMRI that you wouldn't be able to replicate elsewhere?
The environment. The lab I'm with is just amazing. We have so many postdocs who are so incredibly talented, and they're so social, down to earth. And as a PhD student, I remember even when I started going to the lab, I had to practice pipetting, which is where we use those machines, like the machine to draw up like small amounts of liquid. It had been so long that I'd done that. I remember when I first started my honours, I was practicing with water. And so just imagine a postdoc who has been working for years coming back to teach you how to use the most basic thing in the lab and spending hours teaching you the basic things. So, it takes a lot of time out of the postdocs to do that. And so I couldn't thank them enough for where I'm at the moment.
But they just care.
They just care, absolutely. And, the retention in our lab is great. So every student so far that has come through to do honours has actually stayed on as a PhD. And I think my supervisor is actually quite content with that as well.
Given that you've had such good mentors, do you see yourself being able to do that for others?
Oh, absolutely. And I think I already incorporate that as being a PhD student, getting some of the Year 10 students come through, seeing how excited they are by like things that we will now look at and think, oh, that's not really a big deal. Honours students that come through and they're really keen to learn and they look at what you're doing and it's so cool. And just remembering that, sometimes you are the face of whatever you're doing for this person who has no idea what you're doing. So I don't have to be an expert to be a mentor. I'm still a mentor right now.
And I suppose that reminds you just how cool it is what you are already doing. Someone who's younger looking up to you and being impressed by whatever you come to take for granted, because I imagine you're sort of caught in this race of all the things that you still have to achieve and running out of time, and you've come a long way, but you just think about how far you've got to go and you're surrounded by all these brilliant people who are much more senior than you. So also nice to have other people come through sometimes and go oh, this is so cool, and remind you oh, it is, and I've come so far and this person already sees me as someone to look up to. Yeah,
for sure. And you can get really exhausted as well, feeling like you're repeating yourself with some of the things that you're doing. And I certainly felt that within the first 2 years of my PhD, talking about the same thing over and over and over again. But, I've learned, and this is something my supervisor would always tell me, just because you've said it 1,000 times, it doesn't mean that the person listening to it has heard it 1,000 times. So just checking myself when I do feel like, oh, here we go again. It's like, actually, let me put a little bit of pizzazz on this concept a little bit. And so, yeah, it's turned into, you know, some humorous aspects of presenting some of my work. You know, using memes in our lab meetings has become like a regular thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's...
Well, that's partly what's going to inspire the next generation to get involved, though. Totally. But if you were to go and present at a school and speak about it in that way and talk in their language, and you can just see how much you love it. I mean, I think you're a kind of person who never stops smiling anyway.
Oh, that's good.
But the way you talk about what you do, you can really tell just how invested you are in it and how fascinated you are by it. And that would mean that it's really high quality of work as well. And it's just a fantastic thing, isn't it, to have found the thing in life that lights you up like that you can actually also use to be productive.
Yeah.
And I think you're a stellar example of that. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Given that you are doing so much all the time, how do you juggle all these commitments and your own health? Like, what do you do to look after yourself?
I really enjoy sport. So I make sure I take time to exercise, especially, you know, when you're sitting down a lot in the lab, just making sure my back is in place still. Getting old. I know when you start getting up off the chair and you can hear the cracks in your knees and you're like, oh, my time has come. So I do make sure that I am eating well. I try to get enough sleep, you know, the basic things that they teach us, because it's very easy to sort of give up on them and start eating really unhealthy. And I take pride in the fact that, like, I do eat very healthily and do regular exercise, but also just socializing, you know. Not everything in life is meant to be stressful. Like, obviously, if you're trying to do well, it is a stress point, but there are so many things out there that you can stress about. It's very important to, when things don't work out, just take time to do things that you do enjoy. So if I've had like a really big week or like lots of crazy things happening over a few weeks, I'll have the weekend and do something absolutely berserk, you know, get some adrenaline in my system. And
like what?
Well, skydiving.
Oh, wow,
I did
really?
that twice last year. It was an awesome experience. And, you know, just like, you know, going to...
So you're like, I'm stressed, I need to skydive.
Let's do something even more stressful. Yeah. No, it was just, I've always wanted to do it. And I was like, well, why not?
And how much time elapsed before the second time? Did you just say, take me back up, and you went again? Or?
No, it was 2 months, but only because the first time I went, they gave me a voucher and I was like, well, the universe is clearly trying to tell me that I need to do it again. So I went again and I enjoyed that. Yeah, I'll go participate in some like sports, or like occasionally we'll cover like soccer games because I used to play soccer back in the days. I like singing. So just do some jams with some friends here and there, go on hikes, travel, do whatever. I can do whatever I want, really.
Cool.
Whatever's financially allows me to, or whatever I can do within my financial limits.
Yeah,
sure.
So it sounds like you live a very full life, and
you have to make the most.
Work's not your whole life.
Yeah,
and you've got these other elements and a very healthy perspective on it all.
Oh, you have to.
And I think that's important to your capacity to be able to keep going and not get bitter or too frustrated with your work, because you've got all these other things in your life to get some reprieve from that and to recharge so you can keep going.
For sure. Yeah, you definitely have to. I think life is already really stressful, and it's sad that you have to be active in making life interesting for you, but it could very easily become repetitive, you know, just counting down till Friday and making it to the weekend, and it's like Saturday's rest day, Sunday's cleaning and etc., getting ready for the week, like, and then the year's gone, and then 2 years, 10 years, and you don't really have anything to reflect on and have these lists of things that you still want to do. So yeah, if your opportunity presents, do it. Absolutely do it.
Sound advice. And in the next few years, when you finish up your PhD, where do you want to be? Or if, I know it's hard to plan it all out, but what's your short-term goal?
My short-term goal? Well, definitely focus on like family, my own personal family, and just progressing my career. Networking has been a really important aspect of my career and educational progress so far. And I think I also really want to create opportunities for other people. One of the things I quickly realized coming into SAHMRI and just being in science in general is that there weren't many female Africans. And so it's pretty cool now that, like, for example, my sister now does science. I'm like, yes. She's not in academia. She's in like diagnostics. But, you know, she thought it was really cool that I liked what I'm doing. And so she wanted to do science. And there's heaps of other people around me that just can't or struggle to navigate through this educational process simply because, you know, the parents don't have any clue what needs to be done. And quite honestly, my parents had no idea what needed to get done because they didn't do uni here. So how are they meant to help me figure out how to navigate through, you know, selecting the best topics for school and all that kind of stuff? So I think just reaching out to the community is something that I'm also really passionate about, and sort of keeping my foot in to just communicate opportunities and my experience, particularly to young African women.
And be part of the reason that we see more young African women in science.
I would love that. And just like the support, like tutoring, because that's something that, you know, my parents didn't even know existed. And so I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of parents still don't know that it exists. Like African parents coming from like those war-torn areas. And because, you know, there's a sense of protectiveness that comes with that. Like, you're not just going to let your kid go do whatever they want. And, you know, education is not something that's necessarily sold in like countries like Congo, for example, particularly for female, but just like, you know, enabling people to see the opportunities that come out of having such an awesome privilege that, you know, the Australian government thankfully allows people to have quite easily. Yeah, it's something that it's a little side project ambition of mine, but, you know, we'll see how things go. One thing at a time. I just need to make it to the finish line with my PhD first, and yeah, see what opportunities present from there.
Well, you're a star, Joyce. I'm sure you do all that and more.
I'll just work one step at a time for now, but thank you.
No pressure. Thanks for sharing your story.
No worries.
If you want to learn more about SAHMRI and the researchers working to build a brighter, healthier future for you and your family, head to samhri.org.au.